The subject of today's video was the #1 recruit in his high school class, was seen as the next great superstar at Georgia, and was going to be a really good player in the NFL one day. That's what at least some people thought in 2019. With how loaded Georgia was though, he didn't get a chance to see the field much early on, and some called him a bust. He has now made a name for himself these past 2 years, will go down as a Georgia legend, and is flying up draft board. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Nolan Smith. You probably know who he is, as he was the former #1 overall recruit in the country, and is now one of the hottest names in the country when it comes to the NFL draft. We're going to tell his story, talk about how he saved his career, and why he could be so good in the NFL. But before we get started, be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now, let's get started. In order to understand how Nolan Smith has gotten to this point, we first need to go back in time. Born on the Georgia coast, Nolan Smith Jr.'s dreams of football greatness started out on the fields of Daffin Park during his days of playing youth football in Savannah, Georgia. One coach that has known him since he was 7 years old had this to say, quote, "It's been amazing to see how he has grown as a player. He was good as a kid, but wasn't the biggest or the fastest. He just worked so hard to transform himself in high school. When Nolan was younger, he would always urge his mom to take him to big football camps, whether they were in Atlanta, North Carolina, or Tennessee. His mom said, quote, "Nolan was that kid who put Google to work. He would do all the research on his own. He would Google different area football camps across the state and sometimes in other nearby states. It was not easy for the family though, as Nolan later said, quote, "I was trying to go to football camps every weekend when I was a kid because I wanted to be great, but it wasn't easy. My mom would be working all night and get up early to drive me to Atlanta. Nobody was doing the outreach we needed in Savannah." He would eventually change that as he would give back once he saw more success, but at first, he had to play high school football. He arrived at Calvary Day High School in Savannah and blossomed into a high major recruit after his freshman year. That first season, he had 75 tackles, 16 TFLs, 27 quarterback hurries, and 12 sacks. He led the team with 712 yards rushing as well, scoring 12 touchdowns and becoming a threat on the offense for the Cavaliers. He picked up his Georgia offer on the famed 93K day, which kicked off the Kirby Smart era in Athens. That year was 2016, and that was his first offer. He grew up a believer in the line which goes something like this, quote, "Georgia boys should stay home and represent their home state." This is why it did not take long for him to consider Georgia, and he also considered a different high school that could help get him there. He decided to transfer to IMG Academy in the state below of Florida, and he joined arguably the most talented squad in the nation, which was going to help Nolan become the best player he could possibly be. Seeing 1 to 2 big-time college football players all season, he was now promised 40 of those at every practice. He went in there as an athletic 4-star and would leave as the #1 player in the country. Quote, "Savannah doesn't have that true competition around here," his mother said. "There's more competition at IMG. My son's dream is to be a true freshman that plays when he goes to college, when he decides which college he wants to go to." After his sophomore year, he became the first member of the 2019 Georgia football class and committed to the Dogs in December of 2017. Georgia got a gem, and Smith began to blow up at IMG. His coach said, quote, "Even when he first got out here, he immediately jumped out. He was busting his tail during my drills, but I really noticed him while doing special teams drills." From there, Smith would see a meteoric rise over the next few years, and that transfer paid off, and Blue Bloods still wanted him. Despite being committed to Georgia, both Alabama and Clemson recruited Smith ridiculously hard and tried to get him to flip. While at IMG, he played along 2 other 5-stars in offensive lineman Evan Neal and running back Trey Sanders, but he would not be able to convince them to join him in college. Nolan was considered a top 5 athlete in the class of 2019 and had one of the best SPARQ scores in the nation as well. It was actually the best for any Georgia commit ever, and he passed Nick Chubb. As I said earlier, Smith was always on flip watch, and while he would examine the process, it just didn't seem like he was going to budge. He said he was just going to soak the whole recruiting process in, take all his official visits, and go to all the other places. He said you never know what can happen, and if something could change last minute, and he had to be prepared for the worst case scenario. He said, quote, "Georgia may pull my offer today or tomorrow," he said with a smile. There were rumors for a while that Clemson and Bama would also get an official visit, but I don't believe it ever ended up happening, and Smith would sign with Georgia. He would now try to bring some players with him. As he relentlessly recruited IMG running backs Noah Cain and Trey Sanders there, and he said and people around him said he was always talking about Georgia. Sanders would end up at Bama, Cain would end up at Penn State, and Neal would become a top 10 pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. Smith said he always wanted a backup plan as his knee went out, but football was going to be pretty good for him. He was a huge deal after he was boosted up all the way to #1 in the country. He said, quote, "That is great, I guess you could say. The target on my back just became bigger than it already was, though. Now I can look forward to getting everyone's best this season, and much will be required of me. His coach said that Nolan always wanted to be the best, and if someone was better than him, then he would work harder than that person. Well, now that he was number one, he had no one to work against. According to 24/7 Sports, Smith was a 5-star, the number one defensive end, the number one player in the class of 2019, and the 20th best recruit of all time. With high expectations, how would he end up doing in Athens? Well, as you guys know, it's hard to get on the field at Georgia, even if you're a 5-star recruit. In 2019, Smith had finished with 18 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 1 pass deflection, which was great for his first year. The year 2, though, is where people were a little bit concerned. He ended up finishing the 2020 season with 22 tackles, 0 pass deflections, and 2.5 sacks. He was not injured or anything like that, he was just not as productive in 2020 and didn't take that second-year leap that many thought he would. Because of that, some were already saying that Nolan was a disappointment and that he was not going to live up to the hype. Except, he put that all to rest in 2021. While being a part of one of the most elite defenses in college football history, Smith finished with 55 tackles, 1 pass deflection, 3.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and an interception. He helped the Bulldogs go undefeated in the regular season before they would lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game. They'd ultimately get the revenge as they would get to the college football playoff, and Nolan Smith would help the Dogs win a national championship. He had a breakout year, could have been headed off to the NFL, but he decided to come back for one more. He said, quote, "I came back because I wanted to maximize my market value in the NFL. I also got my degree in mathematics, so I have something to fall back on. My mom really wanted me to do that, and I wanted to become one of the first people to graduate from college in my family." So yeah, as you could probably figure out, he decided to come back for one more year, and it ended up hurting him a little bit. He only finished with 18 tackles and 1 pass deflection, but that was because he ended up getting hurt. He started in 8 games as a linebacker before he would get injured against Florida. Honestly, he did have a somewhat underwhelming career at Georgia, but with a good combine, he's played himself back into the first round conversation. On the field, he is known for his aggressive style of play and non-stop motor, and NFL scouts like that. Unfortunately, that torn right pectoral muscle could have cost him being in the first round, but at the time, he had led Georgia with 3 sacks, 7 TFLs, and 16 quarterback pressures, so he was on pace to be great. He also ran the fastest 40-yard dash time by a defensive lineman, clocking in at 4.39 seconds. It was the best of the day, and the second fastest time for an edge rusher since 2003. One thing that we have seen is that NFL franchises love Georgia defenders, as last year it felt like there were 100 Georgia defenders taken, and combining his potential with his blazing speed and his mentality, I still think Smith will be a late first round to early second round pick, and he'll end up being a steal. Despite having that underwhelming career, and some labeling him as a bust, Nolan Smith has saved his career, and is also one of the most likable players. Georgia fans will remember him fondly, and I'm excited to see what he does at the next level. But what do you guys think? If you're a Georgia fan, what do you think of Nolan Smith? How do you guys think he's going to translate to the NFL? And who's another player I should take a look at in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.